bunny. I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns. And welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat McBerry, Doug McBerry, and myself discuss Disney films and Disney products. Before I get into my opening spiel, because I have a bit to talk about before our film today, how is it going, Kat?
Diamond dogs assemble! Ow, ow, ow! Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Doog, how's it going?
You know, I never wanted to review Disney movies. I always wanted to be a lumberjack. Oh, I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I sleep all night and I work all day. I cut down
He's
trees.
A lumberjack. Damn it, how dare you make me sing.
Bears and dogs
He's a
living
lumberjack.
together. Mass hysteria.
So the movie we're going to be talking about today is Nikki, the Wild Dog of the North. But before we get into the movie today, I kind of have to preface this a little bit, because we do have quite a bit of new viewers who are commenting on the old episodes and watching from the start. I don't know where they got their start, but they're asking about some stuff, and they think we started 3 years ago. And they don't know what's going on with the stuff. So for those that don't know, we got our start about like 11, 12 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
We've been doing this for a while, and
Back when there was a thing called Blip. .tv.
Back when there was a thing called Blip, but that was the past. That was the dark ages. So, and I went through a couple different YouTube channels, and but before getting to this one, so we've been around for a while. We tend to review things straight from the beginning of Disney's timeline to the end. What that means is, like, the film from the 30s, you know, we go from the start to the end, and as we went over, we started adding sequels into the mix. So if we talked about 101 Dalmatians, we had to talk about all the sequels. Now, around the time we got to the 60s, we reviewed 10 films from the 60s. Toby Tyler, Kidnapped, Pollyanna, The Sign of Zorro, 10 Who Dared, Swiss Family Robinson, 101 Dalmatians, The Absent-Minded Professor, Son of Flubber, and The Parent Trap. Now that may seem like a small amount of films to some, but the thing is, those with the sequels equated to a lot of films, because 101 Dalmatians has a lot of sequels.
And a TV
Absent-Minded
series.
Professor,
2 TV series, actually.
2 TV series. Absent-Minded Professor has sequels. Parent Trap has 5 sequels, if you include the remake. So, like, around that time, we started to get burned out, you know? Because I don't know about you two, but I know for myself, I'm like, there's just a lot of films, and a lot of these films are, like, from the 60s and or like, late 70s, and they're just, like, a lot of the same content. Like, you could take any of the Parent Trap sequels and mix and match. I still don't know which one was the Hawaiian honeymoon, because even though the setting changed, the premise did not.
I think that was the fourth one.
It's from that dark time during the 80s where Disney tried to make straight-to TV movies a thing, and it didn't quite work. I mean, they still kind of do that sometimes, but it's fair to say that those days are over with, which, thank God, honestly.
And around that time, the pandemic had started, and I was sick, and we were, like, trying to figure out how to do stuff. So, you know, in between YouTube channels and stuff, we took a little bit of a break, and we were coming back, and I said to us, you know what? Let's take a break from these movies and talk about the films that were coming out, like the live-action remakes, because we had already talked about a specific number of these films from beforehand, and I'm just like, okay, you know, let's talk about some of them. After all this time, we are now burnt out of the live-action remake block, and we still have more to do. So it's like, you know, we put off Nikki because we were all just like sick of the Western or the Pollyanna type stuff. Like, Pollyanna's great, but like Westward Ho, like that style of film, we had seen so many, like the 10 Who Dared type film. And I'm just like, we were burnt out, but now we're burnt out on the live action remakes. So we sat down and we discussed it. We're going back to the 60s. We're going back to the 60s.
Welcome to the 60s.
And we're gonna do like smaller blocks of stuff to catch up, and we're gonna talk about 60s, and you know, there's a lot of the 60s, unfortunately. Like, we talked technically 10 films. That's not even a fourth of the 60s.
The 60s were a weird time, too. I mean, that should be obvious, but you can definitely tell in the later half, Disney was definitely trying to experiment with stuff.
They were throwing stuff at the wall. Like, there's Operation Dumbo Drop, and there's, like, Moon Spinner, and there's, like... And the thing is, when Disney Plus came out, we were just, like, we're wondering how things were going to come out, and for the most part, a lot of the old films can be watched on Disney Plus now. But not a lot of the live-action ones. Like, there are some, like, random ones, like the Don Knotts ones and whatnot, but most of the ones that we couldn't find, including Nikki Wild Dog of the North, are not on Disney Plus. They're either streaming on Vudu or Amazon Prime. So, yeah, I spent $3 to stream this film. And it's just like, I really want Disney to put all the stuff in their service, but they started taking stuff off recently, which is... Like, why?
Bullshit.
I mean, it is bullshit, and it's like, I don't get why they... A lot of this stuff was originals. It includes, like, Willow, Better Nate Than Ever. Like, these aren't, like, the best programs, but they're originals. And then they're just immediately in the void now because they're getting rid of all these things. And I'm like, you have a streaming service. It could not possibly cost that much that to host them on the streaming service rather than taking them off. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, to be fair, Disney's already been doing this, except they called it the Disney Vault. Remember back then when they used to, like, put stuff on video for a short time and then take it all back when it was over? That's pretty much what they're doing now, just with streaming service.
I mean, it worked back then because it was home video, and it's like, oh, we can't find that, and then they're gonna make it a limited release and remake the money. Here, it doesn't make sense to me, you know, like, because here, the whole point of streaming is to have this stuff readily available immediately at all times.
Right, but again, I guess they're measuring it by, you know, TV logic, and that if it doesn't get enough views or enough, you know, attention, then they pull the plug.
Plus, residuals. That's less that they have to pay people, and I guess if the stuff is more underperforming, then it's like, yep, that's some dead weight that we can toss. Also, I think I read an article too where they may actually be, rather than like just letting it disappear forever, they may be taking the exclusiveness off it and actually, you know, sell it out to like Netflix or something, you know, other streaming services so that they can show it for a time.
Huh. I guess. I mean, I don't like Netflix either. Netflix has its own issues, and they cancel things after like 2 seasons. Or 1 season sometimes. So it's like, I don't know. The streaming bubble has burst a little bit, and while I do think Disney Plus has the most bang for your buck, if you're not a Disney fan, like, if it doesn't have as much variety for you, but like, if you are a Disney fan, it has so much to offer. So it's like, it's a weird middle ground here, and I feel like taking a lot of the Disney originals off kind of hurts some of that, especially because, like, I wanted to watch Disney Plus simply for, like, these old school stuff, like Don Knotts and Too Many Ostriches, like, you know, what's it, the Apple Dumpling Gang, you know, I want to watch these weird stuff that I had never heard of, because this is a way to get new audience to it. But now it's like, oh no, Amazon Prime has most of it,
Granted, at
Okay.
least like stuff like that you can find in physical media, so it's not limited to streaming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the good thing, and I do like that, hey, if I can't find it here, I can find it on YouTube. YouTube has everything, pretty much.
For the most part.
Mostly, yeah.
But,
Mostly, I mean, like, there's some stuff, but not like, really obscure TV stuff, which I wish were up there, but still.
But if we're being honest, in the context of Nikki the Wild Dog, I can definitely see why they wouldn't put this on Disney Plus. Given the context we're about to talk about. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, I mean, I have this weird love-hate thing with Nikki, and I'm gonna do my best to kind of like sell you on it, and then Kat's gonna give you a summary. But like, essentially, what I got out of this film is take Homeward Bound, combine it with The Odd Couple, and Zeus and Roxanne, so you have a dog and a bear trying to get home, and then a dog surviving in the wilderness, so it becomes Balto, and then it becomes Sled Dogs, I guess, or like it's a weird mishmashing of stuff, but it's also a nature documentary. This is the Living Desert 2.0.
All we're missing is the
Kat-
Scorpion Hoedown.
Scorpion Hoedown. Long live Scorpion Hoedown. For the longtime viewers, we reviewed this movie on Disney called the Living Desert, and in order to make fun, like they actually made a documentary fun by giving a Scorpion Hoedown. It was amazing. Anyway, Kat, give a summary of this film, and then we can discuss.
Sure. I have 2 words to summarize this movie. Animal abuse. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, trigger warning, guys. Sorry, but there is animal abuse.
Yeah, so, like, this movie had an interesting concept, but the execution is where it falters. So, try to imagine, if you will, without really imagining it, because this stuff, like I said, does get pretty cringe. So it's about this man and his dog, and they're out hunting. He has a dog, a little puppy Malamute named Nikki, and he's training it how to hunt. And through his own mischievousness, he ends up coming upon an orphaned black baby bear. Now, the guy gets in his head that, oh, the poor thing, well, we must leave it alone, but, oh, my dog seems to like him. I guess I'll adopt the baby black bear and raise it with my dog. Yeah, it goes about as well as you think, and furthermore, he endangers both of them by putting them in his canoe, sailing into rapids, and making it so that they both almost drown, because they are both tied to each other. And we basically watch a chunk of the movie where we watch a little puppy Malamute tied to a little black baby bear, and them basically almost nearly killing each other for a good 20 minutes. And the rest of the movie is watching Nikki trying to survive out in the wilderness. He's part wolf, so I guess that makes it okay. Eventually they become friends. I air quote friends. And then they end up running into these awful humans, or I should say one awful human, a trapper who wants to kill everything and is the worst human being ever. And then he is trying to actively kill the dog for messing with his traps. I wish I could go on, but it just gets so much worse from here. It just keeps...
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and like at first I'm like, this is a lot of disparate plot threads that like don't seem to come together, especially because like the film starts off with André Dupas, who is a fur trapper. Basically, he and a bunch of people set in 1899 Canada. And so they go up and down river, they get beaver pelts, and his dog is there to help him hunt. They find the orphan black bear, but before that, leading up to it, you have narration, like it's a nature documentary, from Nikki and the bear's point of view. So it's a little bit like Milo and Otis. And throughout the film, like you have the nature documentary narration from these animals' perspective. They go over a waterfall, they get separated, they're tied together, and a bunch of stuff happens. And for a while I'm just like, this feels like one of those old school vignette movies, but then everything suddenly comes and ties back into the end. Andre comes back, there's payoff for the humans, there's payoff for like every little bit that was set up, and I'm just like, okay, it's a very weird structure. We can't really like discuss it as a narrative element. So I want to start with Andre Dupas, because he's barely in the film, and I felt like he should have been in more of the film, because like when the film started, I instantly liked Andre, because like he's played by Jean Coutu, who is an actual person born in Montreal. He's a Quebecer. He's one of the few Quebecers of his area to have appeared in Hollywood productions. So he actually is speaking French in this film, and he does have like this big accent, and you can tell. But I think he's just so enjoyable, because like we spend the beginning and end of the film with him on the river singing these jaunty French songs, and I'm like, I kind of like this movie, because like the songs in Andre are just so upbeat until we get to the Black Bear. But Doug, what do you think of like Andre before the Black Bear part?
So first thing I want to mention, in line with what you were saying, I read up. I think everybody in the production was French Canadian, and in fact, when they dubbed the film into French, they actually had the same actors, voice themselves in French, dub over themselves in French. So, that I felt was kind of interesting. So
kind of a rarity too.
Yeah.
It is very rare, especially for a Disney film.
Yeah, obviously, I'm betting it was a cost-cutting measure, but, whatever. But in any case, I joked around a lot when the film starts and he's singing, and I'm like, Nikki just wants to get out of the boat and away from Andre because he's so sick of his singing.
I don't know. I know it's cheesy, but I really just liked how jaunty and upbeat the song was.
Yeah. I joke. It was kind of nice, but it was like I was also maybe being a little cynical. It kind of felt a little to me like rewatching the 10 Who Dared in a way in the beginning.
It did,
yeah.
but it had better effect work
Yeah.
than 10 Who Dared. I'm going to say it right now, because they actually filmed a lot of this stuff, and we're going to get into it, but like the effect work, the way they did it is, you can't see many of the seams.
Honestly, when it first started, I thought it was like a sequel to Davy Crockett. Like they even used the same font for the title card.
I started singing Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier.
It's Andre Dupas, King of French Canada. And apparently, from what Kat was telling me, this was based on 2 TV specials that were like put together as a movie.
You can kind of see where it splits up, between them when they're like when they're babies, and then when they're like slightly older. You can kind of see where the divide is. Honestly, that part's kind of abrupt, because it's like 1 minute you see like a little bear cub and a puppy, next minute the dog's full grown and the bear is like a few years older. It's like, whoa, when did the time skip happen?
But anyway, Kat, what do you think of Andre Dupas at the beginning and end of the film, where he's actually likable?
Like I said, he's easily the only likable person in this entire film, so you kind of have no choice but to like him. But at the same time, I still think he's a dumbass, because again, he puts these animals in harm's way. Like as I mentioned in the description, he decides to take in a black bear cub. So I don't know if y'all know this, but bears eat dogs when they get big enough. Like, bears eat anything, and they will eat dogs. And furthermore, Malamutes, once they're full grown, can kill bears. So raising a puppy alongside a bear, yeah, that wasn't going to work out for him, even if he didn't almost drown them. And then furthermore, he ties them to each other, which was begging for trouble. And then he puts them in a canoe with no way to, secure them or make it so that if they do fall in, they don't drown. And then, like, he barely looks for them when they washed up down river. And you don't see him for the rest of the movie. It's like, I want to like this guy, but at the same time, you almost killed 2 baby animals. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I really wanted to like him, especially during the beginning. And then he decides, well, Nikki, you seem to like this dog. You seem to like this bear. But that's on a tree. We can't leave him for himself. He doesn't know what to do. So we're gonna tie you together, and you're going to be my problem. And then that was the worst decision he ever could have made, because like that's what started the movie. Although at the end he's shown banning dogfighting, which is good, and he does some good stuff later towards the end. So I liked him as a character. He makes this one really bad decision, and it kind of taints a lot of the movie.
But, I mean, again, he's still the best person in this movie. Because everybody else is just horrible. Even, the townsfolk are horrible. So that he ends up looking like the golden child by comparison. Like, you have to root for someone. I mean, the only other person I think you can really root for is the native guide, and that's about it.
Yeah, and so without Andre to carry the movie, it's suddenly like, oh, Nikki, it's a story about a dog and a bear trying to get along. It's the odd couple, but with Zeus and Roxanne. If a dog and a dolphin can get along, then why not, this bear and this dog and a bear, I guess.
Except they don't really get along. Like, I know they try to make it like this cute little, opposites attract, like animals that you never thought would be friends type story, but they fight each other for like 3/4 of the film. They almost kill each other on occasion. Like, the very first time, like, after they escape the river and they're running away, then it's nightfall, they want to go to sleep. The bear cub, out of habit, goes to climb up in the tree, but he's still attached to the dog. So the bear is strangling itself trying to pull the dog up, and the dog is getting strangled. It is basically on his tippy toes, and he has no choice but to sleep like that because the bear's too fucking stupid to, like, climb back down. It's like, wow, great start to this.
There's a lot of sequences where they're just tied together. And it's like, the rope is part of the big problem. If they didn't have the rope, I feel like this wouldn't feel as bad. Because, like, they do, like, the narration and everything else is like this nature whimsical documentary. And a lot of it is just like, oh, well, the dog is gonna hunt. But the bear doesn't let him because the bear's like, no, we have to go this way. And I'm just like, why did they tie them together?
And, like, I know it's a big trope, people who are handcuffed together or tied together, so they have to work together despite their animosity in order to survive. I know that's a big trope, but it's one thing to do that with, like, adult human characters, and another thing to do it with live baby animals. Because, again, these aren't, like, puppets or animated or CGI or nothing. You could tell these are real animals that the movie makers willingly tied together. Like, they could have legitimately been hurt. And that's what ruins a lot of the whimsy of this for me. Because it's like, if they weren't tethered, they go their separate ways and have a much better chance of survival. Instead, they're actively putting each other in danger and holding each other back from, like, sleeping and eating and basically doing what's necessary to survive.
Yeah, and that's like, when watching, like, initially, it's something that I didn't think about until the end. I'm like, hey, because I'm conditioned by normal, like, regular movies of our era where it's saying no animals were harmed in the making of this movie. So, but, like, then I think about that. No, this was the 60s. And, Kat, why don't you take it away? Because you did some research into this.
Yeah, so I know a lot of you out there probably already know about the American Humane Society. They're the groups that put that stamp of approval at the end of every movie that uses animals, basically saying no animals were harmed in the making of this film. Now, to granted, by this point, they were a thing, because they were established, like, as early as the 1940s, and that was in response to a horse being forced to go off a cliff and basically breaking its back. And, who wouldn't want to, like, advocate for animals after that? The problem was, by the 60s, they started, their influence started to lessen, and movie makers were actively chasing them off set because they didn't want to have to operate under those restrictions and have, like, their work censored. And it's like, I get you're artists and you have a vision, but you shouldn't do that at the expense of endangering animals. But apparently in the 60s, they just didn't care. So you can tell this is one of those movies where there was, like, absolutely, like, no monitoring from the Humane Society whatsoever in this. Like, there's no stamp of approval, which honestly wasn't a thing till the 70s. But even then, there was no, like, note or something saying, oh, these animals were handled with care or something like that. You know, they must have killed at least, like, 20 different animals throughout the run of this film, given what they go through. I mean, heck, there's some pretty badly edited scenes where you can tell that they use, like, 10 different dogs in one shot. I guarantee you at least half of those dogs did not survive this.
I think there's, like, one shot where I noticed where, like, in one shot, Nikki has, like, blood on his head from the bear, and then the next shot, he's fine. So I'm like...
Well, it's not just them, like, putting two baby animals together. They brought a freaking grizzly on set. Grizzly bears not only eat dogs, they eat other bears. And this was a full-grown adult grizzly. I know there are such things as trained bears, but... You don't test that shit. Like, an animal will always choose instinct over training. And the fact that they willingly put the baby bear and the dog in harm's way in front of that giant friggin' creature, like, that really pissed me off. Like, more so than, you know, having the animals try to fight, like, and eat the little, like, you know, rabbits and muskrats and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's just, like, taking that into consideration. You know, when initially thinking about it, I'm like, oh, it's probably just, you know, just a film that has the approval or whatever. No, this is like Milo and Otis. And as a kid, I loved Milo and Otis.
Words?
Words. Yeah, words are hard. As a kid, I loved Milo and Otis. It was one of my favorite films. I put it on all the time. But, you know, a lot of them died making the film as an adult. Like, it's a shame. It's like, it kind of taints the film a lot. And it's like, I think Nikki, if it didn't have this, like, thing hovering over with animal abuse, would be a lot better. Unfortunately, it just, like, you know, the more you watch, the more you're like, somebody died here. And now... There are two things that I know were trick photography, because they didn't actually show the dog and the bear going over a waterfall, thank God. They showed a view of the falls, and they showed them going down the rapids, but they didn't show them going over the waterfall. I was just like, this turned into a Goofy movie for a second there.
Or Homeward Bound.
And there's also is Homeward Bound, pretty much. There's also a scene where they push... another bear that goes into a log, and it's like, it's a blink and you'll miss it, but I was looking closely, it switches to a dummy. You can clearly tell that it switches to a dummy, because he wouldn't survive the fall. So they at least didn't put an actual bear and roll him down a hill in a log. But there's still a lot of, like, animal cruelty that goes on, and it just, like, it does color the film. Personally, I enjoyed the story of what this film was trying to tell about a dog surviving, especially once the bear got free of the rope and they started actually being friends. Like, that was just like, okay, we have Nikki surviving, we have the bear surviving, and then they come together and they become friends. It's an interesting story. It's just colored by that. And, like, they fight, they go, and the bear that killed the bear's mother shows up, and they push him away down a log, and so, like, they bond together. There's a lot of really fun moments, but then it gets weird because the bear goes to hibernate for the winter, and it's suddenly all about Nikki.
Well, they're not going to show the dog hibernating. I mean, come on.
That'd be boring.
Yeah, that would be boring.
And we have to find more ways to abuse animals. So we're on the clock here.
Honestly, I feel like this probably worked a little bit better as a book, but like if they were going to adapt it, I would change it to be like this was Nikki's story, and it's showing from Nikki's perspective, because they show a lot of the bear's perspective, and he's really not important for a large portion of the film. We do get like a lot of the bear helping out and whatnot, but like the second half is mostly all right. Nikki tries to survive in the winter. Nikki goes to see wolves because Nikki's part wolf, and the wolves chase him away. Nikki tries to find food, and he finds traps set up by Jacques Labor, who is this racist Canadian. Basically, he has a helper named Makoki, who is a native, and he uses the I word, which we're not going to use. Native American is the proper terminology.
Native Canadian.
But basically, he's... What's that?
Native Canadian.
Oh, yeah, Native Canadian.
Or
I am sorry.
Or indigenous, whatever you prefer.
Indigenous, yep.
Yeah, indigenous person. So, like, they have a lot of indigenous tribes people here, but, like, they use the derogatory terms. And so, like, you clearly say, oh, these people are bad. But they go away for a while, and then they come back with their traps, and Nikki starts stealing from the traps, and then they put moose fat, but they put poison in the moose fat to stop this dog, and I'm just like, Makoki is clearly saying, hey, it's just a dog, we could be nice to it, and Jacques LeBeau's like, no, we catch furs with my traps, you catch nothing without your traps. He didn't even want to do anything, so he's clearly the villain. And thankfully the poison doesn't kill the dog, thankfully, but basically it kind of like makes him drunk for a little bit. He didn't have enough of the poison, and they follow him back to his hidey hole. They tried to burn the dog alive.
Seriously, I'm surprised those traps didn't hurt the dog, although I'm pretty certain one of the dogs got hurt. I know they were probably fake traps, but still, like, that looked painful, like, especially since they were right in her neck level.
Mm-hmm. Like, there was a lot of parts where, like, did they really, like, clamp this trap on this dog? And, so, like, we spent a lot of the time with them trying to get rid of the dog, and then they finally trap the dog, and a wolf comes out of nowhere, and somehow Nikki kills a wolf, and they decide, oh, this dog is pretty awesome. Let's abuse this dog and put him in a dog fighting ring.
Oh my god.
Okay.
I'm looking at this guy and I'm like, how much worse can you possibly get? Like,
this film goes places.
Like, the first time when he shot at the dog, I'm thinking, okay, that's a shit thing to do, but he thought it was a wolf, so it's understandable. But then when the native outright said, you know, it's a dog, it's not a wolf, I know this, and he's like, I want it dead anyway. I'm like, wow, you're a jerk. Okay, but I guess he is stealing your meat and preventing you from, getting furs and whatnot. But then we get to this part where he's like, oh, you actually can fight and are like worth something. Cool, I'm gonna put you in a ring with another dog and make you both murder each other.
And in order to make incentive, he's like, no, don't be nice to the dog, use the stick. I'm like, okay. And then we get to the dog fighting where, like, they put them both in the ring, and Andre, who apparently is now in charge of things for the area, has said no dog fighting. He's like, but there's the law. He's like, I break the law. I'm like, wow.
And everybody just goes with it.
Law. Everyone goes with it. They have a dog fighting match. Nikki wins, and then Andre comes in at the last minute. And he's like, why are you fighting? I said no. And then they pushes him in with the vicious dog, which it turns out is his dog. And then it turns into a game of casual murder.
Well,
because
I mean, you think it's murder, but it's really accidental suicide.
Or so the Germans would have you believe.
like there's this whole thing where they start punching each other, and instead of like an actual fist fight, they go into this like kicking match, which is hilarious.
Oh my god.
And then after the kicking match, LeBeau takes out a knife and tries to like stab him in the back, and I'm like, these guys are just standing and watching. So Makoki lets Nikki loose, and he stops him. But they're gonna shoot the dog because they think he killed him. But it turns out LeBeau fell on his own knife, and I'm just like, this crowd is the most easily led people. It's like, oh well, the dog clearly killed him. We got to shoot him. I'm like, he was trying to kill his owner. Like
suddenly, this turned into the Mockingbird.
And I know that it's been a lot of me like summarizing, but like we're gonna kind of piece together, like there's a lot of individual stuff here because a lot of it doesn't seem like it'll connect, but then it comes back later. So it just, I'm trying to get these plot points out because like you have the stuff with Makoki, who ends up on Andre Dupas's team at the end of the film. You have Andre coming and then going and then coming back at the end of the film. You have the stuff with the bear, but the bear doesn't come till the very end of the film where he finally wakes up from hibernation. There's just a lot of disparate parts. And like watching the film as I thought like, this is a weird structure, but then it all comes back in the end, and it does have setup and payoff. It does make for a good payoff. So like, I want to judge it harshly, but I can't as much simply because unlike a lot of the other previous Disney films we've seen, there's a point to all these actions. I just think it's a weird structure. Doug?
Yes, it is a little weird. It's like you said, because it starts off like all narrative with a touch of documentary, and it's like then all of a sudden, you've got Andre just up and disappear from the movie, and it basically becomes straight up documentary with a little bit of what feels like a story to it almost. It's like it is very weird, and then of course you get to rediscovering the humans, and then it becomes actual narrative again, and then like Niwa the bear winds up going to hibernate, and then it becomes basically documentary style again, and you see just how bad Nikki is at hunting or being wolf or dog or wolf dog.
There's a lot of documentary in this that I didn't talk about. Like Nikki tries to hunt, and a lot of it is him like fighting muskrats and trying to eat an elk. It's just,
I mean,
it's funny, but
to be fair, like honestly, in reality here, Nikki should have died after about a week in the wilderness because Nikki was only a puppy when he got lost in the woods. He wasn't even fully trained by his master to hunt things. Pretty much this dog somehow managed to hunt, like, with little to no experience. And now he's in the dead of winter, where the only things that are able to survive in the intense cold are either, like, tiny little rodents or, like, giant-ass deer. So it's no wonder.
Or the Wolverine who steals everyone's prey. Fuck you, Wolverine.
Oh,
nobody hunts the Wolverine.
Yeah, and honestly, like even going back to like him as a puppy, or when he was younger, when he's tethered with a bear, they make a point of saying that Nikki does not get the food he needs, while like the bear is able to get all like the berries and things, and freaking Nikki's kind of malnourished. So
yeah, that dog should have been emaciated.
Yeah.
But somehow it became stronger in the wilderness, which is total bullshit in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Malamutes are tough. You train them right, they can theoretically survive in the wilderness. But here's the thing, they're still dogs. They are trained to be domesticated. There's only so much they can do to survive on their own before they eventually need human intervention. And I guarantee you, a Malamute by itself could not take down a full-grown elk. Like, again, if they was trained rather well and it happened to be the extremely big dog and the elk was smaller, maybe. But for the most part, yeah. Like, Nikki, as he is, given the circumstances, definitely should have died, like, at the beginning of this movie.
Nikki also should have been impaled on that elk's antlers, too.
Probably. Or bitten by the muskrats.
Although let's be honest here, like, the only thing that scared me more than the grizzly scene was the wolf scene. Because here's the thing, wolves kill out of spite. Like, wolves hate other creatures, particularly other dog-like creatures. Like, they will chase down coyotes for trying to steal their food and actively, like, break their spines in half out of spite.
I break your back and make you humble.
Exactly. Nikki definitely should have lost to a wolf.
So, Kat, what do you think about the narrative structure? Because, like, that's, like, the big thing that is I think, part of the big issue. And we're going to talk about the animal abuse more, but, like, just the narrative structure in general is so weird. What do you think?
I think, yeah, I agree, but that, again, they're trying to base this off a series of books, which, you know, are basically episodic stories. It's like, you have your beginning of how the dog got in the woods, then you have the little adventures of him trying to get food, then you have them facing winter, and then going their separate ways, and then you have the whole human thing, so it definitely feels more episodic. Like, I feel like this theoretically could have been more of a TV series if they stretched it a bit. But
yeah, I definitely agree with you. Like, it does work as a film because it's only in about an hour and 10 minutes, which, compared to what we've had to go through recently, let me say it's a godsend, because we've sit through like 2.5 hour to 3 hour live action remakes. I don't want to have to watch another 3 hour live action remake for a while.
I mean, it wasn't the worst. I've seen way worse films with narratives that are just aimless, or they go, like, really quick or at a snail's pace or whatever. This one, while inconsistent with its focus, at least, like, kept the pace going at a decent rate for the runtime it had. Like, it tells a complete story, at the very least.
Yeah, it has beginning, middle, end. It may not have them in the same order. It has setup and payoff, even though it has, like, some meandering. It's just a little bit more realistic in certain aspects. And so, like, for me, while it is weird, I strangely got engaged by it. Now let's talk about the animal abuse, because this is the part that Kat takes more issue with than I do. Look, I don't like animal abuse at all. It's just not knowing while watching the film that these animals were abused. It didn't cloud my perspective until afterwards. So I have a little bit of different read, but, like, the dog fighting is the big thing for me, because, like, you know, they got these dogs and, like, they're baring their teeth, and it's like they probably lost a few dogs that way.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, the one saving grace is they didn't show the humans actively hitting the dog. I think that's where they drew the line, which I was grateful for. But even then, they're still putting a dog in a situation where it's in close proximity to animals that, you know, are predators. Like, a lot of these creatures in the film, they're predators. And even the ones that are prey, they have the means to actively cause harm. Like I said, the elk easily could have skewered the dog if it wanted to. I mean,
the muskrat could have bitten the wolverine, what was the
lynx.
other one? Like, the lynx. Like, these are all deadly to a dog.
Exactly. And
the grizzly bear.
And it's like, I get there's, like, you know, it's nature. Obviously, you're going to see animals that, you know, lose or win, whatever, whether they're hunting or they're just, you know, battling each other or whatever. But this is like, you're putting a domestic animal against wild animals. And I don't care how trained you think they are. They will always give in to instinct when they feel like it. And when that happens, trust me, it's a bad day, especially for the domestic animal. So it just
You're
makes
gonna
me
have
cringe.
a bad time.
But
it colors the film, it clouds the film, and it's just like, you take the jaunty, upbeat tone of the beginning and the ending, where you sing the French song, the whoop ba 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 ba. And the songs are great, but then you contrast that with the dog fighting, and it's like, it's such a shame. I want to really like this movie, but, like, knowing this after the fact, I can't really support it. I do think it's a solid narrative structure. I think it's an engaging story, but then you take that into consideration, and that's bad. And then there's the racism. Doug, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I don't know if I'm one to weigh in on the racism. Obviously, racism is bad. We know, obviously, that even the character of Jacques is incredibly insensitive to his indigenous, say partner, whatever.
Partner. They're supposed to be partners, but he doesn't do any of the work.
He doesn't do any of the work, and he still demands more of the share of whatever they get. It's like,
he's like equal share, right?
Yeah.
It's like, without my traps, you wouldn't catch anything. Yeah, but he can track the prey anyway.
It's like, honestly, you're kind of relieved at the end when Jacques is dead and Makoki goes with Andre, who treats him a hell of a lot better and doesn't make any sort of racist cracks or anything like that. I mean, obviously, yeah, the racism in there, but it's not as heavy-handed as a lot of the other films of the era or any future time. But going back on the animal abuse there, it's like listening to a lot of that narration is like you see the animals are clearly fighting, but like the narration is like, oh, they're playing, they're testing out,
they're having fun. He's nuzzling the bear.
You know what's going down.
It's such at odds with itself, and it's like you think, oh no, they just trained the bear. No, they didn't train the bear. They're wild animals. So it's like it really colors. It's such a tonal disconnect. Kat.
Yeah, you know who Nikki reminds me of? Menchie from XL Saga. That poor dog. That poor dog that gets abused by Excel, who just wishes for death. Like, I'm honestly surprised this movie didn't end with Nikki singing woefully over the credits. But honestly,
yeah, there's a lot of bad things that do happen in Nikki.
I know, the poor dog goes through so much, and it's like, I know it's designed to make you care about him and want to see him survive and tough it out and everything, but there's a point where you're like, enough's enough already. Like, lay off this poor dog. And here's the thing that, to me, that I think is the most egregious thing of all. This whole thing with all the animals could have easily be avoided. You know how? Make this animated. Why wasn't this an animated film? They could have done this easily. They did it with Fox and the Hound. This could have been a precursor to that. They could have had the whole whimsy, cute thing without involving the animal abuse by simply making it an animated short. They could have done that easily, and it baffles me that they chose to go this route, especially since it resulted in at least the injury or the death of one of the animals.
But we just did 101 Dalmatians.
It just sucks because, like, Fox and the Hound is one of my favorite Disney movies of all time. I love Bambi. I love these, like, slice of life that are telling a narrative, and I think Nikki has a little bit of a better narrative than Bambi, because it's not just like series of life that happens, it's setup and payoff. It's just the animal abuse and the racism colors so much of the film. Let's briefly talk about the cast. They're barely in the film. I like Jean Coutu as Andre Dupas. He may not be the best character, but I think he is really well acted. I think he does a great job. He's kind of like what the squinty-eyed who plays Davy Crockett? I forget his name.
I should know this. I did a review on it.
I'm having a brain fart.
I know. Don't worry.
Fess Parker.
Yeah, Fess Parker. That's who he is.
Fess Parker. So it's like, this is like Fess Parker if he wasn't squinty all the time. He has this weird accent, but I think it makes him endearing. So it's like, I like how well acted he is. Jacques Coutu, Jacques
Lebeau.
Jacques Lebeau. Thank you. Jacques Lebeau is played by Emile Genest, and I think he does a good job just making him like be, super
asshole.
Evil. From what he had a in 1961 he had a significant role in the first several of films for Walt Disney. So, like, he's going to be in a few more films, like King's Pirate, Enemy Country, Hell with Heroes. So this is, like, one of his starts.
Homeward Bound.
Oh, he was in Homeward Bound? It doesn't list it here.
Yeah, I believe I saw that on there, which makes it really friggin' ironic when you think about it, Oh, that's right. Sorry, my bad. It's the original Homeward Bound.
The Incredible Journey.
Sorry.
Oh, that's why I missed it.
I always mix up those two, so forgive me. But that's what I meant.
He was in the Incredible Journey, but like that is Homeward Bound, so that's interesting. And he's in like Big Red. So we're going to be talking a lot more about Emil coming up. I think he's actually one of the better parts of the film because he's an obvious villain. I don't like him, but he plays it well. What do you guys think?
I mean, he definitely achieves the goal of making you hate him by just being progressively more and more evil. Like, the only thing he's lacking is a snively lip-lash twirly mustache.
Yeah, and he's been in a lot of stuff, so we're going to talk about him more. He's definitely, like, I think, more so than anything, he earns it. I'm not sure about Jean Cousteau, but I'm looking it up now if I can find.
Honestly, I don't think he was in much after this. Like, mostly radio
He's
stuff.
in a lot of French films, some radio. Like, I'm not seeing a lot of stuff here. So, like, it's a shame because, like, I think he was good, but I think it's partly the accent. Because while Jacques has an accent, it's not as pronounced. And then we also have Jacques Fauteux as the narrator. Now, this is interesting because, like, there's not a lot of, like, named characters in this film, but the narrator was played by Jacques Fauteux, and he was a Canadian radio and television announcer, and basically that's all he did. And it's like, you could definitely tell, like, he was like, that was something he did. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, like, at first I thought it was Andre that was telling the story, that he was the narrator the whole time. But then, it's like not until later I realized that they were two separate entities entirely. Like, again, I felt like his narrator was a little, like, kind of condescending, and obviously I have that issue with, they're playing, they were playing so much when they're actually fighting. So it's like, I mean, I can't really give him, too much negative criticism on that because, he's just doing what he's supposed to do. But it's just like, it just adds that extra bit of a discomfort to the film.
And then we have Uriel Luft as Makoki. He doesn't have a wiki page, so I don't. I hope they use an actual indigenous person, but the problem is it's not listed. I don't know. And Nikki is listed as Self, so that really was the dog's name, apparently.
I did like Makoki, though. Like, I think, obviously, he's kind of, as a lackey, he doesn't have too much to do, but of course, when he sticks up for himself, that's, when you see him shine through. And then you could tell, like, he right before Jacques winds up offing himself, it's like, all this time, it's like, you could just see in his eyes, it's like, I want this guy to freaking die. I'll do it myself if I have to. And then he's just like, you just see, like, kind of that glint in his eye when he, finally his eyes like, oh, he died? Oh no.
I like to think that when he went to check on the guy to see if he was dead, that he saw that he was just barely alive, having fallen on his knife, so he just pushed him in a little bit more to end the job. And because you see at the end when he looks at Andre, he's like, I stabbed him when you weren't looking, and I do it again. I like to think that, honestly. And actually, I did read something. I can't really confirm this, though, but I saw somebody who did a review about this write this in their blog. I believe that originally Makote's part in the book this is based on, he was actually supposed to be a woman, and he was the guy's wife. And, like, the whole thing was she was, like, secretly trying to protect Nikki and, like, trying to get them both out of this bad situation with this guy. But I guess involving spousal abuse is just a tad too far.
That's a little bit much. I mean, like, it's weird because, like, I like this cast of characters. I think they're well acted. It's just they go to, like, it goes from 0 to 11. it goes to extremes, and it's just like whoa there. That escalated quickly. Like Brick killed a guy.
Yeah, I saw that. You might want to lay low for a bit.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Don't you know?
Actually,
as a Minnesotan, I have a little bit of that Canadian accent. Wally got to go fishing up at the Butte. Yeah.
You're from New England.
I live in Minnesota now.
You should be hanging out by the car parked at Harvard Yard.
No, I had to get away from the flubber. You don't know what it did.
We will find it one day.
The Providence flubber, bringing that back, that chestnut.
Oh, but one thing.
But anyway,
sorry.
I was gonna take it to you, Kat. Kat, what is your overall opinion on the cast?
I think they did what they could. I appreciate that they all were actual, like, French Canadians, that, you know, they actually shot the movie on site in Canada, because some of those scenery shots were quite gorgeous. Like, if this was the kind of movie that they would have updated, like, those scenery shots would be breathtaking. And again, I appreciate them trying to film, like, native animals in Canada. It just sucks they had to do it by endangering other animals to do so.
Canada, our mortal enemy.
Blame Canada, blame Canada. But yeah, I mean, the characters, you know, they did what they could. I mean, considering this is mostly about the animals and they didn't have much to do, like, I don't know, like, they didn't leave that big of an impact. Like, of course, obviously the bad guy did, because, you know, him just getting progressively more despicable as the movie goes on. That was interesting to watch. You know, I thought Andre was okay, again, being one of the few, like, decent humans there. I was entertained by Makote. Town folks
Makoki.
Sorry, by Makote. Sorry.
Makoki.
Makoki. The townsfolk were all assholes, though. They're like, oh, no, we don't do dog fighting here. Yes, we do. Okay. It's like, oh, the dog defended himself. I guess we should shoot it.
Oh no, they're breaking the law. Let's become an angry mob.
But you guys broke the law, so shouldn't we shoot you then?
You betrayed the law.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there was, like, no standout performances or anything. Again, this is an animal documentary. You're not gonna expect, like, stellar acting in this. So, you know, I guess gold star to each of them for just attempting.
For what I understand, like, personally, I think this is a solid film all around. The narrative is weird, but it has a lot more than you can expect. It's not okay, it's solid. It's above okay. I wouldn't call it great, but I was entertained. The cast is entertaining. There's a lot of good music. It just has a lot of problematic elements holding it back, like the racism and the animal abuse and the what do you think, Kat?
Yeah, you were talking about the movie overall, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly can't really call this a good film. Like, I know the whole intention was it to be a feel-good film for the whole family. I keep seeing that plastered everywhere in all the descriptions. But I'm thinking to myself, there is no way in hell I would ever show a child this movie. Like, forget the...
Maybe Sid from Toy Story.
God. Like, ignoring the obvious, you know, animal endangerment, animal abuse and stuff, it teaches a bad lesson. It'll make kids think that, oh, if I leave my dog out in the woods, he'll be okay and he'll come back stronger than ever. Yeah, try to do that with a pug and see how long it lasts. And it just, again, it's supposed to be like a cute thing with little baby animals, but... unless you're an ignorant kid who doesn't know how animal nature works, like, this is pretty horrifying. Like, you can't go into this, like, educated on the nature of animals, because all you're gonna think is, oh god, that animal's gonna rip the other's face off. Oh god, that one's gonna break its spine. That just ruins it for me. Like, and, like, I get what they were going for. appreciate that they were trying to keep it authentic in Canada with actual animals and native animals, but I can't get behind this film. I just can't. Like, as an animal lover myself, like, I just cringe whenever I think of, like, a single scene that takes place in this. Like, the only scene I thought was cute was the bear licking the dog. And normally that would be a bad thing, but I thought they were little enough and it was cute enough.
Oh no, he's tasted dog flesh.
Run, boy, he has a taste for meat now. But yeah, I mean, I again, if you're curious, maybe, like, you could probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Riff Tracks did a riffing to this. I actually think it would be quite suitable for Riff Tracks, but let's face it, this would have been better animated. This definitely would have made a better animated story than a live action. At least it would have been far less distracting with the animal endangerment.
Doug.
Yeah, pretty much everything that Kat just said. I definitely would not want to show this one to children, at least not very young children. And yeah, it's like, especially given that I'm not 100% sure if some of, like, the animal carcasses they used are real or just, like, dummy props. But, you know, there is kind of, you know, realistic looking too, so, you know, there is that. Otherwise, it's like, I was kind of invested in it, but I was just kind of curious to see where it would go. But I don't know. It's like I'm like on the verge of, like, hate watching it, honestly. It is what it is. I agree. It probably would have been better off to make it animated, but since you already had, like, from a year before, an animated film with dogs, I guess that might have been, you know, oh, we can't do the same thing yet. We're not that kind of Hollywood yet. And then there's, like, weird things they'll, like, include that just don't need to be there. Why are we? Like how the, you know, the bear cub's mother was actually, you know, gave birth to him during hibernation. Feels like that's something that should be focused on, but, you know, it's just offhandedly mentioned in the introduction, and then the mother is killed by the grizzly, so it's like, who cares? All this other stuff is happening. We're not even going to visit that at all. What you call it? The book by James Oliver Curwood, Nomads of the North. This is one of, like, a couple you know, adaptations of the material, and I think there's a movie from 1939 with Lon Chaney in it. And apparently that one is, like, a completely different story altogether and possibly entirely different characters. And it just seems to focus more on humans. So I don't know, you know, if you want more of the human element from your acting, I guess go watch that. And that one also suffers some cruelty because apparently they film a forest fire scene, and a couple of the actors got burned and had to go to the hospital for like 10 days. So, yeah, it's like, that seems to be a common
it's
theme.
better than Norm of the North, but that's not saying much.
But
God.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Sorry. And honestly, like, the fact that this one, like, you know, best edited special, I'm like, really? Really? Best edited? Like, I could tell that there were like 10 different dogs they used in the dog fight alone.
I couldn't, but then again, like, there were some obvious edits. I think they did some good editing work in terms of, like, the log and the waterfall and whatnot, but maybe it was just a different year. Who knows? Right,
it was before the era where everyone could slow things down and look at it 1 frame per second to pick out all the inconsistencies. So, I mean, I guess if you look at it as is without really paying attention to the details, it's passable.
I mean, I liked the editing. I didn't see those seams, but maybe that's just me. My final thoughts. I think this is a solid film that was made in the wrong time period. If this was made today, I think it would have been a lot better. No more animal cruelty, the narrative would be better. Like, you know, the narrative itself is solid and it is engaging. It meanders, and there's a lot of plot points that just take you out of the film. I did have to pause a couple times, but I will say this: it's better than Norm of the North. You know, the book was Nomads of the North. It's better than Norm of the North, but it's also better than like a lot of the old school prairie films that we've discussed previously, because I didn't find myself bored. It has major issues, but compared to like Westward Ho or like The Sword and the Rose or like
I'll give it that. It definitely was more interesting, or like 10 Who Dared. It was more interesting than that.
10 Who Dared was it had better effect work than 10 Who Dared.
Yeah. But at least there you knew the snake was fake.
And you know, at least they don't try to fight a snake. It's like, stop telling me what to do. You're telling me not to fight a snake. I want to bite the snake.
I was half expecting Jacques to try that with a snake.
I would not put it past him. He'd be like El Macho and just drinks snake venom because he could.
So yeah, like, it's better than the live-action remakes we were forced to watch in that it's not boring. It's better than the prairie films because it's better effect work and it's not boring. It has its own set of issues. But, like, comparatively, it's like a breath of fresh air to me. That's my 2 cents, because, like, I don't want to slog through those things again. I would watch Nikki again, personally.
I could if there was riffing over it. Like, that's about it. But
I mean, it's like Roar, you know? You watch it for for the fun of it.
But at least there it's the humans getting hurt, not the other animals.
Yeah, true.
And actually, a little tidbit I learned, which I find hilarious, they actually had to change the name of the dog. Because in the book, the dog's name was not Nikki. It was Mickey. Guess why Disney voted against that?
Oh yeah, that's another thing we forgot to mention. It's like when we were trying to research this, it's like half the sources say that Nikki is male and the other half say that it's female. So it's like we can't get a consensus.
I'm assuming that like they used at least a dozen dogs for this character, so chances are half of them were male, half of them were female. So technically it's true.
Both is true. Any other at the same time, Doug, any other thoughts before we end out for today?
I mean, you know, it's not a horrible film. It's not one that I'm in a rush to watch again. It feels like it's like if you're, you know, somebody that can get past, you know, the thought of the animal cruelty in it, then maybe you'll enjoy it a lot more. But this one, it's like I'd probably skip, and I could kind of see why Disney Plus didn't add it to their roster. Why it's almost buried.
Also, it's apparently partially in the public domain. Like, story-wise, it was the one it was based on is not so much the copyright, but then again, I wouldn't be surprised if Disney eventually let the copyright on this one go.
Yeah. What are your final thoughts, Kat?
If you're an animal lover, go in with extreme caution and just pretend that everybody made it out okay. That is the only way you will get through this. Otherwise, try to enjoy it for what it is, or don't. It's up to you. It depends on how much you like animals and how much you know about the true nature of wild animals.
Personally, I think it's a solid film with a lot of bad going for it, but a lot of good. I feel like if you're a Disney fan, you should at least watch it once to see how the documentary kind of evolved into a narration, like into an actual narrative and a story, because it does show like the evolution of Hollywood from like the Scorpion hoedown to this, and you can definitely see the hooks that nature documentaries have in this film. Just go into it knowing animal abuse. And this is something that I told Kat before she watched, because I watched it first. I'm like, guys, animal abuse. Just saying.
That made us so happy to hear that.
Well, I didn't want you going in and being like, oh, God.
No, I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. It's just, I don't know what's worse, going and knowing or not knowing. But I guess at least the shock of it, wasn't as bad.
Yeah, because I didn't know, and I'm just like, oh, boy. So, yeah, there's a lot of that. With that being said, I'm Zenith Warrior Princess, the cutest of ghost buns.
I'm Kat McBerry.
I'm Doug McBerry.
And we have officially talked as long as the film's running time. Ha!
All right.
Next time on the Disney debate, we're going to continue with the 60s. We're not going to get into the next block of live-action remakes for the films that we've touched upon for a while. So Cruella has been pushed back mostly because it's going to give me nightmares again. I need a lot of booze for that film. And we don't want to, watch Pinocchio again. Ugh. But, that was another thing. There was a lot of bad films, and we just decided no. So the next one, thankfully it's on Disney Plus, is Greyfriars Bobby, which I hope I'm saying Greyfriars Bobby. Yes,
Bobby.
Barbie. So it's and then it's Babes in Toyland. Now I haven't seen either of these. I think I saw the remake of Babes in Toyland, but I never saw the original, so this will be interesting. Greyfriars, I do recognize the name, but not as much. It's not like an obscure Nikki kind of film, but we're starting to get into some territory where there's a lot of weird films, but there's also a lot of recognizable ones too. And the 60s is big. Again, we're not even a fourth of the way done. We'll get there.
Wait until we get to the one with the tennis shoes.
The computer wore tennis shoes. I have to know what is up with that. Or the cat from outer space.
That darn cat.
With that being said, thank you so much for listening in. For all the new fans, thank you so much. Go back and rewatch the old ones. They are older episodes, but a lot of people are still enjoying them. So with that being said, just remember, do not abuse animals. Animals are people too.
Have your pets spayed or neutered.
Fish are friends, not food.
Have a good one, everybody.